Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Bob Lab. I'm your host, Jason. I'm here with Jack, and we have a very special guest. We have Jake O'Donnell. Jake, you want to get the viewer? Do you want to get, how do I say? I need a unique saying every time, but you want to introduce yourself to the viewers? I got to change it up. I say that every time.
Well, I'll do my best. Thank you guys very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. So yeah, I'm Jake O'Donnell. You can find me on Twitter at Jake T. O'Donnell. I am one of the co-hosts on the Pesky Report, where I do during the season. I do the minor league show, Minors Talk. I know you guys know Derrik, I think, pretty well. It's me, Derrik, and Hunter Knoll. Every week we talk about everything going on with the Red Sox minor league system. I also will be on other shows during the course of the week occasionally if they need help talking about the major league team. I also contribute to Beyond the Monster, where I don't have as much time to write as often as I would like to for their site there, but I try to put a lot of time and thought and effort into the stuff that I write there, sort of taking some bigger picture views of things that are happening with the team. I wrote a pretty very lengthy one right after the Christmas holiday because I had a lot of stuff on my mind. And those are the big Red Sox related things. I also my wife and I run our YouTube channel called Wax Pack Wisdom, where we talk a lot about the trading card hobby and baseball history and other sports too. That's a major passion of mine. And so that's been something that takes up a lot of my time outside of work and different things I have to do as well. We've done a lot. It's been a really fun last year growing that YouTube channel as well. So those are the things that you need to know about me from probably the stuff we'll talk about. But I've been watching the Red Sox. I think a lot longer than either of you guys have even been alive. So the first year I went to Fenway Park was 1992. So that's been my obsession for all these years. And I think I started writing more and getting things a little bit. I started putting more effort into stuff that I would write because I've been writing about the Red Sox literally my whole life in one way or another. But during the 2022 season, late in that year, I really kind of started to focus back into doing more of it regularly, and people started to notice. And I know you guys had Ed Hand on recently, and Ed was somebody that brought me into the Pesky Report and has been a big proponent and a big champion of my work, and I really appreciate that. And so everything kind of went from there. So, and now I find myself in early January talking to you guys. So there we go.
Yeah, so I think I speak for Jack too, but we appreciate your time and we thank you for coming on. And let's get to it. So the Red Sox been a very interesting last couple of weeks, I guess. A lot of stuff's happened. It happens in waves. I feel like 1 week we're kind of in the week where nothing's going on, but then the week prior, we have moves left and right. Like we recorded 3 episodes, or I recorded 3 episodes on this podcast. So, let's start. I'll go back to, I guess, Giolito. Jake, let me ask you, what do you make of the Giolito sign? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you in the middle?
Well, I would say that I lean more towards liking it than anything else. I don't, I don't know how people could necessarily hate it. I think that people will probably find a way, but because obviously, the results for him at the end of the day, the last 2 seasons have not been amazing. In fact, he really struggled for long stretches last season, especially late in the year. He was very good in the first half of the year for the White Sox, and then he moves around twice. He gets traded to the Angels, and that goes really poorly. It's a whole situation that's like really bad there, and then he gets dropped and then goes to the Indians, or sorry, not the Indians, the Guardians. And he really struggled there too. And we know that there was things going on in his personal life as well. He had big issues giving up home runs. Still, at the end of the day, he ended up throwing 184 innings, which is, way more. The Red Sox highest, I believe Bayo had the most innings on the team last year at like 157. And we saw the problems with going into bullpen games and all that kind of stuff. So I think if you average it out the last 3 years, Giolito has averaged 175 innings pitched. And again, we had, I think in 2022, Nick Pivetta finished like just under 180 innings. So the Red Sox just haven't had that guy that you can consistently give the ball to every fifth day, and they're going to stay healthy, and they're going to give you, 6 innings, 7 innings every time out. We saw last season how hard it was to have that, to get that. So I think that if nothing else, Giolito is going to be this like solid source of innings. And I think the money, a year, like 19 million, but given his upside, given how good he was in in the from basically 2019 through 2021, he's really one of the top pitchers in the American League. He gets Cy Young votes every one of those years. And I think that the Red Sox feel like he's still young. He's only, I think, 20, I have it right here. He's 29. He turned 29 last year. Like, he's on the right side of 30. So I think that the Red Sox look at that. They look at Bailey and what they can get him back to with like the right coaching, because again, you look at, especially, I'm not going to speak ill of Cleveland. They're a good quality organization, but I mean, he spends like a huge chunk of last season with the White Sox and the Angels. Like, I mean, what are we talking about here? Like, I feel like the Red Sox are, with Bailey and the pitching, infrastructure that they have, are much and kind of in a much better spot to be able to get more out of Giolito than previously. So I think that there are obviously concerns with how poorly he pitched at times last year, all the home runs he gave up, contact he gave up. He still had 204 strikeouts in 184 innings. That's pretty great. But I think that it's ultimately, it could possibly only be a 1-year commitment. So you're not tying yourself down too long to him. A big advantage also is that you could give him the qualifying offer if he has a good year and leaves, so you can get a draft pick for him, because that obviously, I think that the White Sox probably were hoping going into the year that, like, worst case scenario, that's what would happen. So I like the signing. I'm a proponent of it. I think that he fits a need in terms of a guy that you can get good innings out of, but also like there's upside that you can tap back into that guy who was a great pitcher before 2022. So yeah, I'm a proponent of the signing for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. A lot of upside. That's a common theme we've seen from Craig Breslow. I think there's got to be more to come, though, right? Giolito, yes, he has the benefit of, he's been a good pitcher before, and up until his personal issues leading up to the deadline, he was decent. And this is kind of a 1-year prove it deal, but can he be the number one? I mean, he probably could, but I think there's got to be more. I'll pivot to Jack on his thoughts too. Like, what do you think, Jack? I think you got to have more than that, whether it's via trade or whether it's via the free agent market, which I highly doubt at this point, but we'll get more into that later.
Yeah, they no doubt need another arm, and I know we're going to talk about that a little later with maybe Snell or Imanaga or trade, but without getting too deep into that and more so on the Giolito topic, I think Nate, I think the way they approached it with the potential qualifying offer after this year is huge. So I think strategically it was done really well by Breslow, but I also think that it gives them, like Jake was saying, a guy who can take the ball every 5 days, which they haven't had. And Pivetta was obviously a little bit weird with how he was in between starting and long relieving last year. But if they think Pivetta can be a number 4 or 5 starter with the new sweeper and elevated fastball velocity, and you have Giolito, now you kind of have 2 workhorses. Whereas last year at points you were, strategically optioning guys to and from AAA just to complete series. So I think the workhorse aspect is huge, even if you don't tap into what he was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it is. Even though there is definitely confidence in the upside with Andrew Bailey potentially getting him back to old form. Like Jake mentioned, the strikeouts are still there, which is huge, right? That when you want to kind of reinvent somebody's career and get them back to where they were, strikeouts is the big part that you look at. So I think there's a lot to like, and considering it's the 1-year deal, potentially could be 2, and then potentially could be 3, is huge, and it's pretty affordable too. I know when we had Ed Hand on, he was thinking like, yeah, this guy's probably just going to get, he's probably going to get as much length on his contract as he can. So to me, it's essentially a 1 year prove it deal was a little bit surprising to me. Although, a lot of people argue it's a small market move or whatever. I'm not going to frown upon it. I'm happy with it. But Jason, it like you said, is contingent on them going out and doing something else, which we'll talk about more.
Yeah, I think I'll give one more thought, and then I think it's good to move on unless Jake has any thoughts after what I say. I heard him and like Bayo were probably the top 2 pitchers in the league. I think it was something from Red Sox stats. Correct me if I'm wrong. Something on the something with like their fastball was pretty bad after the second half. In the second half, I don't know if you guys saw it, but that's where Andrew Bailey's going to come into play. Can he fix their fastballs? Can he fix their command? Only time will tell. So, Jake, you have anything to follow up, or did you want to move on?
And no, I think that, yeah, it's going to take work. And I think, I was definitely impressed by Giolito's, press conference, the quotes that came out of him where he was very accountable about his struggles last year. He seemed very excited to work with the Red Sox team, the new folks here to help in the pitching infrastructure. I mean, obviously Giolito had a market. He could decide where he wanted to go. Sounds like the Mets were interested. And it's interesting today, we're recording this Sunday, they kind of pivoted and signed Sean Manaea, who I think is like a far inferior pitcher. And it's interesting to me that like he worked with it. The Giants signed him and he worked with Andrew Bailey last year, and the Red Sox didn't really have any interest in Sean Manaea. And so I think that, Manaea's had, he's had flashes of being a really good pitcher through the years, but not anywhere near as good as consistently as, like I said, Giolito was from 2019, 2020, and 2021. And Giolito was a really highly touted prospect too, when he was with the Nationals, and he got traded to the White Sox. So I'm interested to see what he can do. I think it's a good signing. I think that, being able to spend 18 to 20 million on a guy like that shows that the Red Sox were, committed to helping get the rotation better. But I completely agree, and we'll talk about it more, that there has to be at least one other significant starting pitching acquisition this offseason.
Right. And I think this is a perfect time to pivot to Chris Sale, because you said this move is going to lead to more moves, or at least it's an indication. Chris Sale traded to the Atlanta Braves for Vaughn Grissom, and forgot cash too. But right. I think it was a good trade. I liked it a lot. Another upside trade. I think the Sox saved around $8 to $10 million in the CBT. I guess, Jake, this is where you're coming. What do you make of Vaughn Grissom, and what do you think about the trade, I guess?
So the Vaughn Grissom part is fascinating. I think that the Red Sox very clearly looked at the second base market and were just like, in terms of especially free agents, and were just very unimpressed with who was available. And I'm sure that they poked around other possible trades. That, the name Ha-Seong Kim has come up a lot. And even with just like a year left, I'm sure that the Padres are still asking for quite a bit for him. He's an excellent second baseman, great defensively, and had a very good year at the plate last year too. So I think that this was a very creative move by Craig Breslow and by the front office to say, okay, we're going to basically buy this prospect. We're going to buy this player. We're going to send $17 million for 1 year to the Braves, plus Chris Sale, who we've decided we don't view him as part of our long-term future. We've had, they know his health better than anybody. They know what he can and can't do, and saying, okay, we're going to use him and go and get somebody who we believe very strongly could be like the long-term second baseman of the future for the Red Sox. I think that Grissom is a fascinating player. He's a fascinating prospect. He was in a situation where it seemed like in Atlanta there wasn't going to be he wasn't going to have a lot of opportunity to play. And I think considering the expectations that team has, I think there was just he could really kind of only fail unless he just was like, crazy good. Because again, you saw what happened. Like, they gave him a shot. At the beginning of the year, he wasn't great. Orlando Arcia takes the job, and then that's pretty much it. And he can't, and he was clearly not really an ideal fit defensively as a shortstop. And he couldn't play second base because of Ozzy Albies. So I think that it's the right opportunity for him to come to Boston, where he will get a chance to play just about every day. And I like his approach at the plate. He's seems like a very smart hitter. He's he's much more of a contact oriented hitter. And we know that, like, just prior to the new front office coming in, I think that was a big point of emphasis. The Red Sox seem to they want to bring in guys who are good, higher contact hitters. It seems like maybe that's staying with Craig Breslow in charge. So the Vaughn Grissom part of it was great. I think that's like giving up Chris Sale, who I think a lot of us probably thought you couldn't give him away or you couldn't really get anything for him. The fact that they paid down, a huge chunk of his salary for next year. And obviously there's a whole thing about he gets the extension and the Braves aren't really paying him next year, but like, whatever, that's either way, like, that was the cost to move him out and get something back. So the fact that they were able to get not just something, but like a really good a good prospect, a guy who has performed really at a high level in the minors, like at every stop, and had an outstanding year last year in AAA. To get him, he comes in, he's now your everyday second baseman. I think it was a really creative, interesting, well done trade to get him back. And then as far as Chris Sale goes, like I said, it's so unfortunate. The fact that he just had one really bad thing after another happen to him. And, the extension goes down as one of the worst contracts ever in the history of the Red Sox. No question about it. I think that it really hurt Chaim Bloom. It really tied his hands, knowing what we know now about the sort of budgetary restrictions he's had. The fact that Sale struggled so badly really tied his hands and made it made it hard for him to make improvements in other places of the club, because so much of the contract extension, he was injured. You think about it, like, he really struggled in 2019, was injured, misses all of 2020 with Tommy John surgery, misses almost all of 2021 also coming back, although he comes back in late in the year and is good and is also good in the playoffs. And then, the whatever it was, like the rib thing or whatever in spring training, and then he misses most of that year. Comes back, he gets hit on the hand, the bicycle thing, whatever. Like, it's just like whatever weird things could happen to Chris Sale happened to him. And then this year, when he was out there, I thought for the most part he was pretty good. He had some really bad starts against the Orioles mostly,
right? But
then if you take out those starts, he was really good. And then, the shoulder thing is tough. I think that anytime a pitcher gets a shoulder injury at this stage of their career, it's really cause for long-term concern. It's really weird to me that the Braves gave him an extension, but whatever. That's a whole other. It's hard to like question the Braves moves or like the way that they do things, because he always seems to end up working out for them. But I think that I think Sale, it was said a bunch of times this week that the guy like worked so hard to get back. And I think, Red Sox fans, I think we all appreciate what he did for the Red Sox. Chris Sale in 2017 had one of the best sort of post Pedro Martinez pitching seasons the Red Sox pitchers had. And then 2018, he's great too. He gets hurt down the stretch, but we, the playoffs and striking out Machado and the world, like, it was awesome. Like, having Chris Sale on the team was great. But I think that it was the right move to move on now from him. And, I think one thing that I've thought about a little bit since the trade happened is I'm going to make like a Celtics reference here. So like the tie, like it made me think a little bit of the Robert Williams situation, where it's like the guy gets hurt all the time. What he can do, how talented he is, but every year in, year out, you're like, okay, great, cool. His knees his knee's busted up again. He needs another 2 or 3 weeks. He comes back. He's good. Like, it's a headache. Like, you know, the guy's talented, but it's like this headache of like, okay, like we got to make room for him because he's this guy. And I feel like that was the way it was with Chris Sale the last couple of years, where it's like, you have to pay homage, you have to pay deference to this guy because he's Chris Sale. And if he's on your team, he's going to have a spot in your rotation. Well, you know, the bottom line is, like, I would rather see Cutter Crawford in the rotation. I would rather see Nick Pivetta in the rotation. I would rather see, you know, some of the other guys get a chance instead of having to carry Chris Sale, hoping that he's going to be some version of the guy that he was before. So I wish him the best. It was weird to see, definitely strange to see him in a Braves hat, but you know, overall good trade for the Red Sox, creative trade, and the type of moves that I think hopefully we're going to see more of from Craig Breslow.
Yeah, lots of upside to Vaughn Grissom, and then like you said, that's a good reference to Rob Williams. Like, we know he can do, he just cannot stay on the court, or in this case, the field, to save his life. But the guy's an incredibly hard worker. I mean, we hear it all the time.
Competitor too.
Competitor, right? And then in terms of the media, like him and Chris Cotillo said something on the lines of like, "Oh, he always gave us great quotes." So in that aspect too, it's like, it sucks. But overall, though, I think it was time to move on from him. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, like Jake said, it opens up opportunities for Cutter to definitely be in there. I would have hated to see him be forced into the bullpen after, I think, pitching pretty well when he was a starter last year. And also it gives Pivetta a chance with the sweeper and with the additional velocity, like I mentioned before, to put it together for a full season. And you already have Bayo and Giolito, so it kind of seems like a necessary move. The extension was interesting to see Atlanta do that so quickly, considering how injury prone he is. But I like the move, considering that the second baseman market was super thin. Free agents was like Donovan Solano and Whit Merrifield. Pass on both of those guys, and then, I mean, who's available in the trade market? Ha-Seong Kim's the guy who everybody throws around, but he's going to be very expensive if you trade for him, and then he's going to require a pretty big extension or contract next offseason. And then the only other one, Jason, that we kind of talked a lot about would be Brandon Drury, but another guy who's getting up there in age and only has one more year left on his deal. So you have kind of a fitted theme with Grissom, whereas he has 6 years of control. He's super raw, has super young, and has a lot of untapped potential. So it kind of fits the theme of what they've been doing with Costas and Duran and other guys like that. So all around, I think it was a great move, but I think that helps us pivot in towards, all right, if they have Bayo, Giolito, Crawford, Pivetta, who's going to be that guy to kind of take over the rotation if they even have one? So, Jason, we can start with you and then go to Jake, but I know we've talked about Imanaga. Not sure how well he projects to like a top end of the rotation kind of guy. I think his market's kind of gone crazy with Yamamoto and others getting pretty big bags, but we've talked about Snell also, trade market. Where are you at right now for them adding a top tier starter, if they even do or can?
I'm a no on Imanaga personally. Giving $100 million to another guy who hasn't thrown a pitch in the MLB, who has major home run concerns, and he's going to play at Fenway Park. So he's a no for me, and he's not even going to be, probably not an ace. He'll probably be another 4 or 5, not 4 or 5, but more of like a middle of the rotation guy, I should say. That's why I'm a no. Probably won't get, just because the Red Sox hands are so tied. I can't envision them getting another starter like Montgomery, as much as the fan inside of me wants a Montgomery, wants a Snell. I just realistically just looks like it's not going to happen. And I feel like this is a good pivot to Jake. So Jake, I think personally they're no on Imanaga because they need the top of the line. They need top guys. They need a number one. They've been needing that for years on end now. I personally don't, like I just mentioned, don't see a Montgomery or Snell, but where are you on how they can acquire a number one pitcher, whether it be on the free agent market or the trade market?
Yeah. So yeah, there are no number one after Yamamoto signed. There are no number ones on the starting pitching market like that, like for free agents. So that's number one. Everybody else, and I include Blake Snell in that. Like, I just think that,
that's interesting.
I think it's interesting. Like, Snell won the Cy Young Award in the National League last year, and he was great, especially in the second half. He had like a 1.2 ERA or something like that. But I just think like so much of it was, a lot of it was luck. A lot of it was smoke and mirrors. A lot of it was, you know, he had 2.5 ERA, whatever, last year. I think his FIP was more than a run higher than that. He led the National League in walks. He led the National League in hits per 9. And he also had, I believe I don't have it up in front of me, I'll have to pull it up, but I believe his batting average on balls in play was like 256. So that means you're lucky. Like, and and he's 31. He is injury prone. And we heard today from Bob Nightingale, he had it that that there are big market teams that are afraid of how he would handle things. So he to me, let him be somebody else's problem. I think he's more of a West Coast guy. Interesting move, obviously, by the Mariners to trade out Robbie Ray. Maybe does that open up the opportunity for them to sign Snell? Snell is from Seattle, maybe. But as far as and then Montgomery is a very talented pitcher. He's an innings eater. I like what he can do. I think I think his numbers in terms of his ability to pitch and to be up there and pitch in big games. We saw that last year. I think he compares favorably to Carlos Rodon in that way. It seems like the buzz right now feels like he's going back to the Rangers, but we'll see. It seems like there were some financial issues in terms of their TV deal and stuff like that. It seems like maybe they've kind of sorted that out a little bit. So maybe he ends up going back there. We'll see. And then once you get past those two guys, it's a lot of guys who are, maybe their ceiling is they could be like a number 3 starter. And I do think that's kind of what Imanaga is, the best version of him. I like his stuff. I think that it would translate pretty well to MLB. There's a big concern about how many fly balls he gives up and the fly ball rates. And there's, kind of gone back and forth, seen different things about like, well, it was a hitter's park that he was in Japan, but maybe it wasn't really. It was kind of like average, but I don't know. I agree that I think that I think the $100 million number is like agent speak trying to, drive up the price. It's really, the reporting has been kind of all over the place about who is actually in. It's like there was some Alex Spear reporting saying like, well, the Red Sox are just lurking. They're not really in it. But then I think that Nightingale today said that the Red Sox were one of the teams in the bidding. I don't know. It's hard to get a read on it. We will know. Today's the 7th. We're recording this. His posting window closes on the 11th. So he will have to decide. And that will probably crystallize more of the market for these sort of mid-tier starters. So I mostly agree that I don't know that we're going to see the Red Sox sign another like starting pitcher in this market. But so I think that the likeliest outcome feels like they will try to make a trade. And we've heard a lot of that. I think Spear, others have said that the Red Sox have been very active in the trade market trying to make something happen for starting pitching help. Now, whether or not they can actually get somebody that we would call and classify as an ace is a separate question. And I don't know. I don't know who that is. We've heard a ton of names mentioned as possibilities, and maybe teams are listening on certain guys. The thing that I keep going back to, and I've said it a bunch of times on Twitter and other places, is that we saw this with the Chris Sale trade. Like it was stunning to see that. Like the stuff that actually happens is the stuff that we never hear about. This Robbie Ray for Mitch Haniger and Anthony DeScalfani, like that came out of nowhere. Like that was crazy. Nobody was talking about Robbie Ray being the one that the Mariners were going to trade. So I just would caution people to I keep seeing people being like, well, who are they going to trade? Like they don't want to give up this guy for who or whatever. It's like, we don't know. Like, we have no idea. We don't know who's actually available in trade. And now, I'm not saying I think this is going to happen, but like, for all we know, the Giants could be like, yeah, we'll listen on Logan Webb, or the Diamondbacks could be like, yeah, we'll listen on Zach Gallen. Like you don't know unless you ask. Now, I'm not saying, now this is not me saying I think that those guys are going to get traded. In fact, I don't think they're going to. But the point I'm just trying to make is that we're not in the room. We don't know who is actually we're not the one on these phone calls. We don't know who's actually being discussed in this. And so I would just say, like, we'll just have to see what happens, like, as the season approaches. I do think that likeliest outcome is a trade as opposed to a free agent signing for this whatever is the sort of next starting pitcher they want. But who that is, I got no clue. But it's above my pay grade. It's not a job I want. So good luck, Frank Breslau.
It's anyone's guess. I mean, just looking at all the moves we've had thus far, like the Verdugo trade. I know it's not pitching, but that came out of nowhere. The Luis Urias deal to Seattle, out of nowhere. Tyler O'Neill, kind of out of nowhere. Chris Sale, I know Carabas and Merloni, the scoop shop thing before. And there's that tweet that's a little birdie told me Sale to Atlanta. But though my point is those all have come from the blue. And I think it's not off the table that we could see the Red Sox trade for someone. Like, it could happen in the next month. It could happen in the next 5 minutes. So Jake's right. I mean, we don't know what the phone calls are. We don't know who's available. We don't know, if X team is willing to listen to X player. We're not in the room. All we can do as fans / I guess independent reporters or independent analysts is just wait and see what happens unless you have sources. But I don't know, Jack, what do you think about all this?
It's tough. It's very tough. Everybody thinks it's like, oh, Luzardo or, oh, Kirby or whatever, but it's very tough to say. I think they're not going to get Snell. They're not going to get Montgomery. I think those guys are a little bit too rich for them. I think Imanaga, personally, I could so see it happening. I think he's very interesting, though. He is much older than Yamamoto, but even though they aren't even comparable pitchers, although Imanaga in Japan did have higher strikeout rates than Senga and Yamamoto, I believe, which is interesting. And that's, again, like with a supposed pitching guru like Andrew Bailey, stuff like that is intriguing. However, his values doubled from what people thought he could get 2 or 3 months ago, right? People thought maybe he'd get 50, 60 million. Now people are saying he'll get 100 count with his posting fee included. So that's a concern, especially being a fly ball pitcher in Fenway. That's not something that you want to probably mess around with, but I could see him as a realistic possibility. But it's so easy for people on Twitter to say, all right, let's just go get our ace and then we'll be good. It's really hard to get an ace. I mean, the traditionalists will tell you there's 5 of them in baseball, right? A lot of people will tell you an ace versus a 1 is different. And yeah, all that can be true. Yeah, Garrett Cole or Logan Webb, those guys probably aren't available. Snell is, like Jake said, probably a little bit lucky and inconsistent too. So I don't know. I don't see them committing 150, 60, 80 million to him just to have another Chris Sale type deal for 5 years, right? Somebody who's on and off the field, not consistently performing well. So I think they're in a tough position. And I think Breslow probably has his hands tied a bit, similar to the way Bloom did, which really sucks. I mean, especially for us fans, that really sucks. But I think it's going to play out soon. Imanaga could, since his stuff has to unfold in the next 4 days, like Jake mentioned, that could be telling as to when they do something. But it's tough to say. I think Imanaga is possible, but outside of him, I don't see them, going to Stroman, pivoting to him, or spending big money on Montgomery or Snell. That's where I'm at.
Right. And I know, Jake, you're on the minor league show for the Pesky Report. I feel like personally, even with the addition of Vaughn Grissom, there's starting to be that log jam of like not pitchers, but outfielders and position players like Nick York, I mean, where's he's only a second baseman. If they're really committed to Vaughn Grissom playing second base, where's he going to play? Or outfield. I'm kind of working on a piece for Beyond the Monster as we speak, kind of analyzing like the Red Sox have a lot of outfielders. They got to decide on who they're going to commit to. And I just think something's got to give. Jake, I guess, what are your thoughts on this kind of like log jam? At least I think there is, but what do you think?
Well, so for the outfield, it's very interesting, and we haven't really talked about the rumors around, Teoscar Hernandez, the reporting from Alex Spear the other day was that the Red Sox have made a 2-year offer. They don't want to increase that offer. There was another report, I believe it was from last night. I think it was from Hector Gomez. I think can't remember his name, Hector. But either way, the report was that the Dodgers seem to be in the lead for Hernandez, and that they are willing to go beyond 3 years. Even, who knows? It seems like there's a lot of agent posturing and things happening with this. This is always what happens this time of year with all of these moves: is that stuff that gets leaked, stuff that's out there is somebody's putting it out there for a reason, and it's to gain leverage, and all that's why this stuff happens. So who knows what's really going on? I do think that it is. I certainly would trust that Spear, if he knows that the Red Sox made a 2-year offer, I would take that to the bank.
Same.
So I think that if they sign him, then I don't really know how they can. I don't know how they can go into next season with the entire outfield mix that they have, unless they're just like completely okay with like keeping, Rafaela and Willie Abreu in the minors, which maybe they are, but I think that's the surplus that you trade from to address the starting pitching need that you have. And so yes, I agree. Like you have probably too many guys in the outfield that are available right now that you could move. I think that I think Ceddanne Rafaela is the name certainly to watch as a trade candidate for the outfield, just because of I think maybe maybe there's another team that really thinks that he's going to hit in the majors, that they can change his approach, and to go along, they're willing to live with whatever they get offensively because of how elite he is, especially as a center fielder. I think that's probably the big name to watch. I think that Abreu is a name to watch too, depending on how other teams feel about him. As far as the middle infield goes, I think that what's fascinating is the fact that like none of these guys have really played. I guess the one guy who has played a lot in AAA and also has played quite a bit in the majors is Emmanuel Valdez, and then you also have David Hamilton, who has played some in the majors, but not a lot. I think that those are guys to watch as trade candidates more so than like Nick York, because at least those guys have big league experience. At least those guys have played at AAA. I don't see the need to trade Nick York now. I think like if you can, if somebody bowls you over, if another team just is totally enamored with him and thinks that he's like going to be their starting second baseman like sooner rather than later, and you can get a piece back that you want, whether it's a starting pitcher or maybe it's power hitting right fielder or power hitting right-handed hitter or something like that, then you could put Nick York in that trade. I also just think that I think he had less value because he hasn't played at AAA yet, and he is certainly, I believe, ticketed to be the everyday second baseman for the Woo Sox next year. He showed a lot last year in Portland. He I think held his own very well defensively at second base. I think that a big thing was that he was healthy all year after he had a really tough 2022 in terms of injury and really struggled at the plate in Greenville. And then, but there are holes in his game too. Like there are some issues around, swing and miss at pitches in the strike zone with Nick York at AA that I think would be troubling to teams. I think that he did a good job of ultimately making contact in a lot of situations, and probably is good at hitting off speed pitches. But he struggled against premium velocity in hitting in Double A, and so I like I said, I would just like to. I would, if I'm the Red Sox, I'd like to see what he can do at Triple A before I decide to trade him. And this goes back to something I've said. I think I've probably said it in the group chat that we're in, Jason, where I've said that like the Red Sox like shouldn't trade, in my opinion. The big reason to not trade from the sort of big three of Marcelo Meyer, Kyle Teal, Roman Anthony is because I don't think those guys are at their highest trade value yet. Like that's the biggest reason to not trade those guys, is because they haven't none of the three of them have proven themselves at Double A. Like, yes, those guys have all played at Double A. Meyer was hurt the entire time he was playing at Double A. We didn't find out about this until later, and of course he misses most of the second half of the year because of his shoulder injury. And then Anthony and Teal only went up to, and they both look really good in Double A, but they were only there for like a couple of weeks at the end of the last season. So all three of those guys are going to get the chance to go back to Portland and prove themselves at Double A. I think that, and as great of a season as Anthony had last year, and he had a hell of a season last year, I just think like the Red Sox would honestly be, unless the Mariners are offering you George Kirby for him now or something like that, which I don't think they are. I just think I think the Red Sox would be selling themselves short if they traded any of those three guys before they have a chance to prove themselves more at Double A. So, and then the big question was about like trading from surplus. I think that's what they're going to have to do. I would even argue that the Red Sox do have, especially after some of the trades that they've made this offseason, I think they have surplus arms close to like in AAA and close to in around the majors, like guys on the 40-man and not quite on the 40-man. That they could trade from that depth. Like I'm not talking about guys like that are like surefire, not guys that are starting pitchers in the big leagues or anything like that. But they have depth that they could trade, Brandon Walter. They could trade, Brian Mata is a guy that they might have to look at trading because of the fact that he's out of options. They traded Nick Robertson. He was in the Tyler O'Neill trade, but that's like the type of guy I'm talking about. Justin Hagenman is somebody that they could trade. They could trade, I don't know, like Ryan Zefferjon or these guys that are like pretty close to the big leagues who I think they have that depth of more of those guys now that they could move on from. Chris Murphy is another guy. I think Hunter Knoll would smack me in the face if he ever heard me suggest that we trade Chris Murphy. But that's I think what you're looking at is they do have some depth of close to the big leagues pitching they could trade from if they wanted to.
And that's surprising because as someone who looks at the Sox farm system, I know I'm not the same caliber as you, Hunter, or Derek. I say, where's the big pitching? And it's Perales and Gonzalez. But then you do make a good point where the Nick Robertsons and the Brandon Walters of the world, they've had experience in the major leagues, and a team could value that. It's like, okay, here's what we can do. And the Cardinals, they saw something, I guess, in Robertson that they're like, yeah, let's do it. Let's take a flyer on him for a guy who is kind of a logjam in the outfield, because the Cardinals also had kind of a logjam there too. Jack, I guess, what are your thoughts too?
I think we've talked about like the middle infielder thing for a while now. And it's starting to translate now to the outfielders, which if they get Teo Oscar somehow, it doesn't look as probable as it did before, considering the Dodgers are heavily in on him. But if they did get him, I think, like Jake said, it's Abreu, it's Cedon, it's one of those guys probably. For whatever reason, Yoshida just kind of got brought into talks, which I don't see happening, and I hope they hold on to Duran, unless they somehow sold high. But yeah, it's something that they're going to have to address at one point or another before they start losing value on some of these guys. So it's something that we should probably see this offseason.
Yeah. I think this is a great time to Bring in someone that you might know.
Who brought this guy in? Oh my God. I'm leaving. Goodbye.
Okay. So this is Derrik. Derrik,
wow.
You've been on the show
many times.
When he brought the Chris Murphy, I saw you laughing.
Coming on, Jake, and I'm like,
okay, I don't know this person. Good to meet you.
Wow. When you were talking about Chris Murphy, I saw Derrik laugh. Derrik laughing at the screen.
He said Hunter would slap you. He said I laughed.
I didn't suggest trading Alan Castro at least. Like that was, that was then I'd get slapped by. Imagine if they traded both of those guys in one trade. We'd
be rioting. The Pesky Report minor league show would be rioting.
Yeah. Well, Derrik, it's good to see you.
Yes.
We have only got George Kirby in that trade.
Well, yeah,
I'd still be a little upset.
I'd still be upset.
Out of all the guys you picked, that's the guy you picked, though. Like, couldn't have traded anyone else,
right? Oh man.
So, I guess welcome, Derrik, and
big surprise! Woohoo!
Wow!
Ooh, yeah, this is
out of nowhere.
If it makes anyone feel better, I finished my first season of my Red Sox MLB the Show franchise. Vaughn Grissom hit 301 with 31 homers.
I mean, the 301 sounds about right. The 31 homers,
doesn't
if you get 301, that would be amazing, and I wouldn't be surprised. But 31 homers, it's like taking advantage.
Oh, but I traded Jaron Duran away, and he hit 38 homers. So like,
I think you might need to blow on the cartridge. Is that a thing still? No, I don't think so.
I don't know. That's what happened. I traded him to the Angels, and then what do you know? He hit 38 homers.
With the Angels? Wow. Well, I like the quote from Vaughn Grissom. 23, that's my Jordan year.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Setting the bar high.
I love it. I guess anything else we got to say here?
Derrik just comes in.
I know Derrik just joined. I don't want to.
Derrik just comes in and that's it. I guess just coming in to say hi.
Thank you,
Derrik. Now that
we do have to quickly promote something though.
Jason. Yeah.
Wait for the end. Wait for the end.
Do we want to say it now?
No. We'll say it now.
Derrik.
Well, you already started saying whatever it is, so you might.
All right. So Jason, Jack, and I are putting out. We are going to be ranking players at every position across the MLB. We're doing top 10 position players, top 20 relievers, and top 50 starting pitchers.
And Derrik, so we have it on the record. Explain the point system briefly.
So essentially, all three of us made our own lists. So position players 1 through 10, relievers 1 through 20, and starters 1 through 50. And then essentially, so for the position players, first place on everyone's list got 10 points, second 9, all the way down to 1 point for 10th.
You
add up all the points.
Almost, yeah.
Kind of similar. Right. Yeah, you add up all the points. Whoever has the most points is first. Whoever has the second most points is second, third, fourth, all the way down to 10th. And then it's the same thing for like starters, except the top number 1 got 50 points, all the way to 50th who got 1 point, and just do it that way. And that's kind of the collaborative, and we came up with a collaborative list that way. And also ranking position players and pitchers.
Yeah, and thanks to Derrik, we're going to have some really nice graphics to put out. So that's all coming very soon. Very exciting for us.
Although we do have to discuss, you guys don't know the nickname I have on the Pesky Report.
I've heard of it. Crap. Oh,
Jason might have heard of it.
I've heard of it.
I can give a hint. It's food.
Oh my god. Pasta.
Close. What do you eat with pasta? What's something that you eat with pasta?
Oh, cheese. Cheese.
Oh no, someone said it. Yes, Jason got it.
Shout out to Ed
Meatball.
at hand for that nickname.
Oh, that's right. No, I remember that. Okay, I kind of remember.
Yeah, because Ed's.
I gotta listen to more.
How did it get started? He just was
it got started because I was late to recording once because I was helping my grandmother make meatballs.
All right,
because my sister wouldn't help.
How can I forget? That was amazing when that happened. That was hilarious.
I was like 20 minutes late.
Yeah, we almost bagged. Well, we didn't bag the episode, but I think Ed was. I think we asked Ed to come on, right? Was that what happened? And then
I asked Ed to get on, and then I hop on 20 minutes, sorry, I had to help make meatballs.
Yeah, meatball. He had to help his grandmother make me. I forgot about that. Wow.
Yeah, so
it's a good
grandson. So I have the nickname Meatball for Pesky Report. Jake doesn't know my name. Off the Monster Crew and now Bob. Not Bob as much off the Monster. They've given me the nickname Stats because whenever someone needs stats, they just go to me.
Okay. All right. Stats. There's a lot of good stats out there. There's
we've heard that one.
Stat Masterson and Stat Boy and from PTI and
I don't claim that nickname, but it's what they've given to me, so I just kind
of. That's the best. Those are the best nicknames. Are the ones other people have to give you the nickname.
Yeah, like Meatball.
Yeah, like Meatball. You can't give yourself a nickname. That's very lame. So,
do I need a nickname now? I kind of do. Off the Monster.
It has to happen organically. However, it happens.
No, your nickname's Dave O'Brien because that's a running joke. It's an inside joke.
It's a running joke.
We have a running joke about Dave O'Brien.
Okay.
Anytime something we just start getting kind of like real off the rails, we just rein it in by just like, okay, so Dave O'Brien, and just kind of it's like an inside joke we have.
I see. Okay.
Because it's because I don't know what happened. It was just
one day on space.
Yeah, we were on a space, and there was just Dave O'Brien came up for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was just like, and we're like, why are we talking about Dave O'Brien? It's like,
I remember it got like off. We went shocker off the rails, and then it was always segue by okay, so Dave O'Brien, huh?
Yes, that was our rein it back in. Like okay, this is a little bit. Let's get back on track here. That was our thing. So yeah, we have a lot of inside jokes. We have the roast beef for the
roast beef. Yeah, that's a good one. That was from the fact that. Like there was like a promotion when Hunter was like a kid, like going to I think it was Lehigh Valley games for a roast beef sandwich. Like if a guy got a hit, if like somebody got a hit or like got a hit in a certain inning.
No, it was like if that one guy I think hit a homer.
Well, I don't know. Was it the one guy?
Oh, it wasn't the one guy. No, it wasn't one guy. Always hit the homer.
The guy that always hit the home run that people would get like the Arby's gift cards or whatever. They called him his nickname started to be roast beef. So we made a joke that if anybody tallied up who actually was the who won the most Guess the Prospect games during 2023 season, that we would give them an Arby's gift card with the caveat that they had to spend it on a roast beef sandwich. But somehow for some reason nobody took us up on it. I don't. It's that
no one was interested in the roast beef sandwich.
It's not right. But I think next year we may have to actually keep track.
Yes, well, hopefully. I had been keeping track like the first month, and then I just totally forgot because I didn't write it down, and it should have been me though, because let's be honest, I was the one who was the host of the show, so the little mini game show thing. So I'll take the blame on that one, but we got a good moment out of it with the roast.
We did, yeah. We got to. We should try to do an episode soon. We've only done one Miners Talk in the offseason. It was when we interviewed Philip Sykes. It was a really good show. But there just hasn't been a lot to talk about from a prospect standpoint. But that could always change.
The only thing that maybe we could have talked about is like when they traded Verdugo, and it's like, oh, we got prospects back, and then because we never really did like a Rule 5 like review kind of thing. So like we could have maybe tried to like. But still, it's a little like, okay, that's like, we're going to talk about what the two guys they got from the Yankees realistically, and then what the Rule 5 draft like.
It's been a quiet time for that, but we'll
figure it out.
I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about the fact that we're only like a little over a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting.
It's all the Boris guys that are holding everything.
Feels like so much off season is still left that has to happen, but it's going to all happen in a very short period of time.
Yeah,
there should be a deadline for just Boris clients. You have to sign by this date.
Boris clients have to sign by the end of I haven't heard that idea because people have talked a lot about like how can you make things go faster in the offseason and their deadlines, whatever. Very specifically, if you are a Scott Boras client, you have to sign by the end of the winter meetings. Like that should be it. Yeah, then everything else falls into place. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Hey, Derrik, now that we have you, right before you joined, we were talking a little bit about pitching. And I know your guy, Sean Manaea, signed early this morning. So
I talked myself into Manaea for the last week and a half too. I was doing my research on guys. I'm like, you know what? Manaea, since he had a sweeper, had like a 3.60 ERA. His last 4 games of the year, he started them when I think he averaged like 6 innings in those 4 starts, like per start, and had like a 220 or 225 ERA.
Yeah, and a Bailey guy.
Yeah,
it's only 4 starts, but yeah, working with Andrew Bailey last year, and then supposedly he's working at Driveline. He's added a splitter this offseason, which is something the Mariners have famously been doing with George Kirby, with Logan Gilbert. They did it with Robbie Ray, so it's like, okay, maybe there's something there. And the Red Sox have hired a gazillion people, it feels like, from Driveline in the last, year, 2 years, however long. And like you said, Andrew Bailey's there. Now we have Breslow running the ship. I forget who their director of pitching is now, but they hired him from the Twins. I forget his name.
The Red Sox. His name is, I believe his name is Justin Willard.
Yeah, I always forget his name. But so like these 3 guys, though, who are there, who are kind of overseeing the development of pitching, especially in the big leagues. And I think who was the free agent? It was Giolito who said like he was impressed by like the pitch of like
the philosophy.
We talked about that. We talked about that earlier. My thing on what I said before on Minaya before you came in was that I just think like if Andrew Bailey was like, I like what he's doing or what he can do, I would imagine that he would have pushed more for the Red Sox to sign him.
That's true.
The fact that they didn't tells me that, I don't know, it's not some great loss. But the Giolito thing is interesting because of how good his stuff is. And I think I was saying before that's like Minaya is does not have nearly as high a ceiling of a pitcher as Lucas Giolito does. So
he has a 1-start ceiling of a no-hitter.
That is true. I was going to say we've seen flashes of how good he can be, but we've also seen Lucas Giolito be like one of the best pitchers in the American League for like 3 straight years. So, but he's only 29, and maybe they can get him back to that. But,
and we have talked to minor leaguers about the use of all of analytics and pitch tracking data and just all the stuff. We talked with the CT about it. Christopher Troy talked to Hunter Dobbins about it. So it feels like they have a plan on the pitching development side of things. And it seems to have been working in the minor leagues. We saw it with Nick Pivetta. They added a sweeper to his mix this past year. I think they did it around the same time the Giants added a sweeper to Manaya's mix, actually. I think they were both like the end of May. And Pivetta after that. I think even his fastball ticked up too. I know they had worked with him this past offseason on throwing his curveball over 80 miles per hour. I think that was the thing that came out. Because like when he throws it under 80, like it gets hit. When he throws it over 80, like it's like untouchable, I guess.
Yeah, no, that was fascinating. Yeah, for sure. I'm interested. There's a lot of room to grow for a lot of these Red Sox.
You got to work on the 4-seam fastballs though for Bayo and Giolito.
Exactly. I think Bayo's a huge one. Like if Bayo gets like more swing and miss with his stuff, like you're talking I think right now we feel like maybe he's like a 3, like or possibly a low end 2. But if he gets can gain more life, whether it's more life on his fastball or a little bit more velo, or just like it ticks up like a little bit, then you are talking about a ceiling with a guy like Bayo. But it has to happen. And the thing that I'm excited about with Bayo is I think that he can, at the very least, he threw 157 innings in the big leagues last year. Like to see him get up to 170, 180 next year. And then you're really, you have something that's really impressive. One thing I want to make sure that we talked about a little bit before, before we stop is about the payroll stuff. And there's been a lot of obviously concerns about where the Red Sox going to end up payroll wise. And I think that my take on it is that the Red Sox should do what it takes to have the best team that they can, and that they should go into 2024 with a team that doesn't have big time noticeable flaws. The last couple of years, that's been a problem. 2022, the Red Sox went into the season. It was very clear they didn't have enough in the bullpen. It was just obvious to everybody. And guess what? That's exactly how it played out. The bullpen was awful. So going into the 2023 season, the Red Sox did a great job of fortifying the bullpen, signing Kenley Jansen, bringing in Chris Martin and whatever. But they didn't do enough to support the starting rotation. The big acquisition was Corey Kluber. We all saw how that turned out. So I think that the bottom line is I think people have gotten very hung up on and I agree that the shackles being on the baseball operations staff in terms of payroll is disheartening to hear about that stuff. But at the end of the day, what matters is have a 26-man roster that you feel good about going into the season being complete so that they can compete for a postseason spot. One thing that I don't feel like has been brought up enough is that, are they going to be at or above the CBT, whatever? A big reason why they could be right around there is hopefully because of some extensions that they could give out, which is like, I think we all agree that like the big one to focus on is Casas. Like, it would be amazing if they could work out an extension with him where he has 1 year under his belt. He's got 5 years left. They could like buy out like a few of his, buy out all of his arbitration years and buy out his, his free, like a first couple of his free agency years. Yeah. In order to do that though, you're going to have that CBT number is going to be a lot higher because it's based off of for that contract, because it's based off of the average annual value. So an example of this is the contract that Corbin Carroll just got, where he got like 111 over 8 years. Well, his CBT number went from 750,000 to almost 14 million immediately, because that's the contract. That's the way it works. So there's been a lot of this discussion about like the Red Sox they're not going to come close to the CBT number or whatever. They very easily could, and they could possibly go over if they do what I think we all want them to do, which is lock up, especially Casas and also Bayo too. Like, but I think that people just think like that's not going to impact the CBT. That's going to have a huge impact on the CBT. And if they don't do other big, huge free agent signings, this is the right year to do that, because they can certainly afford to go over the CBT. It doesn't seem like they're going to, but they're at least going to get close just based off of the fact that you could have 10x the CBT number for like Casas and Bayo. They could even consider an extension for like Nick Pivetta also is another one. They could talk about longer term deals possibly for even Cutter Crawford or Tanner Houck even, or these guys. Like, give Tanner Houck like a similar contract to what you gave Garrett Whitlock possibly, like where it doesn't even matter if he's a starter or a reliever, and you have cost certainty, and that could be really valuable to other teams as part of a trade. They could even look at, I'm going to go crazy here. They could even talk to Vaughn Grissom about an extension. Like I'm just like throwing it out. They could talk to Marcelo Meyer about an extension right now if they wanted to. No, I'm not kidding. Like they could do that. Didn't we just see that with Jackson Chourio? So,
and apparently Bloom was trying to do that before he left.
That was the word, was that he was trying to do that, especially with Casas before he left. So yeah. So I think that like I think people are focusing on the wrong things. What people and yes, the Red Sox should be held accountable for the team that they put together and how much money they spend on the team. But what they should really be held accountable for is, are you going into 2024 with the best team, with the best team that you can? The salary numbers, to me, it's an easy talking point for the media. And it's an easy thing to beat up Fenway Sports Group about. And yes, they deserve to be beat up for the last couple of years, having a payroll staying under the CBT when the team had very obvious flaws. That's the problem. But if they go into next season with a team that you feel good about 1 through 5 in the rotation, you feel good about the bullpen, you feel good about all of the starters, you feel good about the bench, you feel good about the depth that they have in AAA. If you feel good about all of those things, that's more important than they were above the CBT or they were below the CBT or whatever. Because the last thing I'll say on this is like, I don't like the having a super expensive team is fine if you're winning. If you have a super expensive team and they suck, no one's going to be sitting in the bleachers at Fenway in August and September saying, well, at least they spent a lot of money on this shitty team. No one's going to say that. They're going to say, well, at least they're going to say the opposite, which is, wow, they spent all this money on this team that sucks that I don't 2019. So just have the best team that you can. That's what matters. Yeah.
I will say that so I was looking at Red Sox payrolls on Twitter, looking at their spreadsheet. And I was looking through the last few years. So obviously they went over in 2018, win the World Series, great and all. It was like 245 million was about
way over. Right? They went way over.
It was 2019, similar payroll number, missed the postseason. All right.
Terrible.
2020, according to Red Sox payroll, they were under. 20.
Yeah, because that was because of the Betts and Price trade was why they.
Well, yeah, exactly. In 2021, according to them, they're under by like 0.1 million.
Yeah, they were.
And
just
they made
under.
the postseason. 2022, they go over. They missed the postseason again.
That's bad.
And then now 23, they were under. But the last 2 times they've been over the CBT threshold. Like they've missed.
Right. I should have clarified the 2022. Yes, they were over. But they were over, and the team wasn't good. If they were going to go over, they should have gone like up to the next level to like get a bullpen and better starting pitching. Instead, they had the sort of team that they had.
Don't go over just for the sake of going over.
Exactly. That was the huge.
If you're going to go over, make moves that are going to make your team better and going to fill holes that you.
And I think them going. This is just my speculation, and we found out about this that like last season they had an in-season budget of you can't spend more than $225 million.
Right.
I think that was, and again, I'm just speculating. I don't know this. I feel like that was a direct result of the fact that they went over in 2022 and they missed. They had a 78 win team. Like I think that that ownership started to lose faith in Chaim Bloom at that time. Like that was the issue. So,
and like I said, last 2 times they were over, they did miss the postseason. So
exactly.
It's not so just because the payroll was 225. The budget was 225 doesn't mean that it's like, oh, it's bad because they couldn't have gone over. It's like, even if they went over last year, it doesn't mean they're guaranteed to do well. You have to make moves that are going to improve your team, not just spend money. The other thing I do want to add in terms of like payroll things, which is the amount of money the luxury tax number isn't always the amount of money you're paying that player that year. So I'll use this example. This is obviously the most like extreme example, but Shohei Ohtani, his AAV number is like 46 million on the luxury tax, but like the Dodgers are paying him 2 million, right? So on the when you think of the Dodgers, it's like, oh well, they still got Yamamoto and they're paying Ohtani 700 million. It's like they're paying him $2 million this year. That barely changes their payroll. Like, let's be honest, it barely changes their payroll for this year. So they have money to spend to go out and get those other guys. Yes, does it push them way over the luxury tax? Yes, it does. But in terms of their like what money they're actually that's coming out of the bank and going to players, it's a lot less than what the luxury tax number is.
Right.
Yeah. So there's also that. Not like so if they give an extension to a guy like a Casas, right? Let's say the AAV's let's just say 15 million. It's a round number. Let's say this year they only are paying him like 3 million. The luxury tax number is going to be a lot higher than what they're actually paying.
Right. Yeah, that's my point. That's what I was saying before. It's like that's what's going to impact the bottom line. So it's like I think that if they do what we hope they do, which is at least give an extension to Casas, and I think they should really try to give one to Bayo too. It sounds like both of those guys are open to it. Then the Red Sox will come. They absolutely should come right up to that CBT number, if not go over it. And again, they should not be afraid to go over it because of the fact that they were under it last year. And they could go, if they want to, because of money coming off the books, the money that they're giving to Chris Sale to not be here next year, and Kenley Jansen's money, regardless if he's here or not, that's another $16 million. All of that money is coming off the books. They could possibly get back under again next year. And that's even with the really incredible free agent starting pitching class, which is coming next to offseason, which is another reason to not extend yourself. If you don't believe one of the remaining starting pitchers is like a big time ace, which they're not, if you're not totally sold on them, a big reason not to extend yourself for Imanaga or Montgomery or any of these other guys or Paxton or whoever is because next year you've got Max Fried and Walker Buehler and Corbin Burns and right now Zach Wheeler and just the list kind of goes on, Shane Bieber, and the list goes on and on and on of guys who are going to be free agents this time next year. It's
and maybe Roki Sasaki as a amateur,
maybe
amateur free agent, maybe.
And so that you have to keep your powder dry for those guys if you don't believe that this is a great offseason for starting pitching free agents, which it isn't.
You go, Jack.
Okay, well, what I was just going to briefly say to Jake's point about, don't go over just to go over. Obviously that didn't work for the Mets and the Padres, but go over because you feel like that's what's best for the team. What I think is interesting is I think making the assumption that they didn't go over last year because they had lost confidence in Bloom is totally valid, and that's probably the case. But what it sounds like is they don't want to go over, certainly not over, and not even that close to the first threshold in the first year of Breslow's tenure, which is interesting to tie a guy's hands and not really give him the chance to go out and spend and get guys that he likes in the first year, which I think's a little bit weird, I guess.
Well, we don't know though. Like, right? Like it's not. There's been a lot of stuff that's been reported. There was this whole like bizarro world Twitter thing that happened last night about like shedding payroll or not shedding payroll. That like I don't really want to get into, but like the bottom line is it is true that the Red Sox, they came into the offseason with, I think it was 194 million committed in payroll. Right now they're at 201. So they have not shed payroll. And they've made a lot of, and I think you look at the individuality, the individual Red Sox moves, and I think they all make sense. And are the Red Sox like a great team right now? No, they need another hitter. They need another starting pitcher at least. And depending on what they do with the bullpen, they might need another bullpen arm too, especially if they end up actually trading Kenley Jansen. But the Red Sox could decide we're not going to trade Kenley Jansen, and we're not going to trade Yoshida, and we're going to go out and sign these guys because we think it's the best thing for the team, and blah blah blah. Like I just think that we have to see what ends up actually happening. Like I think that we are going based off of what is being reported, which is that there is like a budget in place, and there probably is. But I also think we have to just kind of see what happens. I think, like I said, I think that if they give these guys extensions, they will be at or possibly over the CBT number. Like that is my view on this. But I could be wrong, and they could be. I don't understand. There's no benefit whatsoever for the Red Sox to not be trying to get extensions done with guys like Costas and Bayo. Like I think this is the perfect. Like I know that people like were thinking like let's do it last off season. I didn't really think, or going into last year's spring training, I didn't really feel that way because I wanted to see both of those guys like have a full year in the big leagues and see how they work, how they prepare, how they approach things, whatever. I think both of those guys passed those tests with flying colors. So now is the right time to try to get those extensions done. And if you do that, like that's the CBT numbers are going to probably go from 750,000 to as much as 8 or 10 million for both of those guys right away. So, but we'll see. But there's zero reason for them not to do it. There's zero reason for them not to do it.
Right. Because you don't want to see in like 4 or 5 years, it's like the same thing we saw with Rafi Devers. Like,
exactly.
What are you doing? You got to do it earlier.
You got to avoid.
If they don't want to fall in the same trap they did with Rafi, what the hell are they waiting for?
Exactly right. Remains one of the most bewildering things that's happened with the Red Sox in the last 10, 15 years was the fact that they didn't even like it. What was it like? I'm trying to remember the timeline here. They made the offer to him that was like the Matt Olson contract. Remember that?
Yes.
That was in spring training of 2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
that was reported later, though, right? I'm sorry.
Right, but the reporting was that the Red Sox had not ever approached Devers about a contract extension before that. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's unconscionable that that's what happened. Like it was, and that's on multiple baseball operations administrations. That's on Dombrowski and that's on Bloom. Like the fact that 100%. They never especially after it was very clear. And again, I really don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but like after it was very clear that Mookie Betts was not going to sign an extension, that the Red Sox were not going to either A, they weren't going to give him what he wanted, or B, he was just going to say no to everything. The fact that especially after the 2018 World Series, they didn't turn around and say, okay, we're going to try to give this money to Devers. And again, I don't care. Like it's not my money. The bottom line though is that this, like, instead of what ended up happening where he goes year to year and now they have him obviously locked up, but the CBT number is like 30 million or close to whatever. It could be 15 million right now. And then they could have, maybe that would have been the thing that would have allowed them to sign Kevin Gausman a couple of years ago, or have a serious conversation with him, whereas they had zero conversations with him, or whatever. Like, that is, especially now that we know, like, so much stuff has been recontextualized about the last few years. Now that we know that, especially that Chaim Bloom was not allowed to spend as to the same level that Dave Dombrowski was allowed to spend. Like, if he had been allowed to go way over the CBT in 2022 or whatever, or even 2021 going over, like they because like Derrik said, they stayed under in 2020 and 2021. Well, like, they could have gone out and tried to sign and made like a serious effort to try to sign Kevin Gausman if they had they had the money under the CBT to do it. And part of how they could have done that was, like, if they had cost control and cost certainty with Devers in these years, which would have included now and like his free agent years. The thing is, we'd probably be having the conversations we had last year about, well, you're going to have to give him a new contract, and that's fine. But, like, you kick the can down the road a few years, and it doesn't kick in until after that the current extension is over. So yeah, so like you just said, don't run into the same situation with Tristan Casas, especially.
Right.
Give him the contract now.
Yeah, and we had time flies. September of 22, we had Bradfo on this show, and he said he literally asked Devers, "Has anyone approached you for an extension?" And he said no.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
It's
what
wild.
are you doing?
Am I the other thing too? It is wild because you even go back to like the 18-19 offseason, or like in 2019, it's like, we give Sale the money, we give Eovaldi money, we give this guy money, that guy money. It's like, do we want to even try and give Mookie Betts money here? It's like, now maybe Mookie might have said no, we don't fully know. But at least in my opinion, like, for me, I would have just chucked all the money in the world at Mookie first before chucking all the money in the world at Sale and Eovaldi and Steve Pearce on a 2-year deal. No offense to Steve Pearce, but like, he lasted how long in 2019? What, 2 months? Yeah, and then we haven't seen him since. Like,
fun fact, I went to the Lowell Spinners and he played a game there.
No
for rehab assignments. Yeah. Nice. Him and Hector Velasquez, fun fact, was the pitcher that day.
That's great. Nice.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name in a very long time. That's cool.
That is a name. They do need to bring back the Lowell Spinners.
Absolutely. Oh.
I miss the Lowell Spinners.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah, so one other thing I did want to bring up, though, Jack, me and you had a conversation a little bit, last night. It was in regards to this past deadline. And we all know that the Sox they should have had a choice, either buy or sell. Personally, I think they should have bought, right? I think this team was worth investing, but not all in, but it was worth maybe investing for an outfield, or investing in our outfielders for other pitching or something. But now that we learn the reports of, okay, they had their hands tied and they were very close to that ownership threshold, I guess. My take is they probably should have sold, because I think probably we all agree, if they did nothing, we all knew they needed something else, considering the tough tasks down the road. They needed more, and if they couldn't get more, then they probably should have sold. I think that's my take. Jack, you remember that conversation we had last night?
Yeah, and it looks like, kind of like Jake said earlier, it looks like they had an in-season budget last year, so they really couldn't have brought on any new money. But like you said, Jason, if that is the case, and you probably aren't gonna, maybe you'll be a wild card with what you currently have, but if not, yeah, you're fighting for a playoff spot. At that point, sell Turner, right? They could have gotten Cabrera from Miami, it sounded like. Sell Duvall if you can. Potentially Paxton if you can. You look into some of the 2-year guys like Martin or Kenley. But yeah, at that point, pick one or the other.
That's where your guys' takes on.
I don't disagree with that about the trade deadline. It's just, like, I think, again, like, what they were like 2 games out of the wild card at that point, or it was pretty close.
It was like 2 or 3, something like that.
I don't know. Like, it comes down to how confident was Chaim Bloom in keeping his job, because there was another thing that came out, I think, after he was fired from Chris Cotillo where I think he said like that he had heard, and I don't think he had it fully confirmed, which was that like the Red Sox ownership had given Bloom at some point a like make the playoffs or you're fired like ultimatum. So I think that he knew that if that was true and he decides to sell at the deadline, then he knows he is 100% getting fired. So
that is a good point.
If that is the case. So I think like there was a job self-preservation part of it there with Bloom, which was like, okay, I'm going to just make like this one really small move around the margins to bring in Luis Urias and call it a day. And I also think like, yeah, so if you're going to go that route, and you can't really add payroll, then I guess that was the only thing he could do. I also think that there's a realistic, thing in terms of like, if he was going to stick around and he wanted to stick around, which I think he did, if you kind of make this like sell move again, like if you trade Justin Turner or you sell off James Paxton, we saw what the 2022 trade deadline did to the clubhouse in trading out Christian Vasquez. And I think there was a concern on that part of it too, which is
I think that's why they didn't trade Verdugo at the deadline.
Right. Well,
partially.
It sounds to me like the clubhouse may have been okay if.
Well, yeah, but with the whole, if he was trying to make the playoffs, like
yeah.
At the time, like Verdugo had started to struggle a little bit, but like up until the All-Star break, Verdugo was still playing really well, at least of my memory.
He didn't hit the slump that ultimately ended his time in Boston. That's
exactly
what we know. But I mean,
and that's what I'm saying. And that's what I'm saying. Like, the Verdugo problems didn't really start to show until really like after the deadline.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's of my memory, which might be a little off.
No, that sounds right.
No, I think that.
We thought
he
was a snub.
Right. Yeah,
and then that's why I think they didn't trade him at the deadline, especially if it was to the Yankees. Let's be honest. There's no chance they would have done that. But now that you look in this offseason, they trade him to the Yankees, but all the problems that happened. It's almost like the thing of like if the Red Sox had known what was going to happen with Verdugo the rest of the year, I think they probably would have traded him at the deadline. If you told Chaim Bloom, heading into 2023, something was going to happen, if they were going to have an in-season budget, maybe he would have made the Chris Sale trade before the season. So that's trading him to the Rangers, right? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
But that's all like if you would have known what's going to happen in the future, which is literally impossible, right? Was Chaim perfect? No one's perfect though. Like even like Alex Anthopoulos, Andrew Friedman, they're not perfect. So like Chaim definitely gets some fault, but he's not like the guy who's like he shouldn't have to take all the blame for everything that has happened over his tenure and all the problems Red Sox have. Yeah. He's not the guy to put all the blame on because he's not the only guy that's involved in decision making and setting budgets and the whole entire process. He's not like the only guy there is. He doesn't own the team. He doesn't run the baseball team. He doesn't manage the team. He doesn't play on the field. He doesn't do all of that. He only does one thing, which run the front office. He doesn't do he doesn't control ticket prices. He doesn't make ticket prices higher even when the team struggles. So he shouldn't get all of the blame. Does he get some of the blame? Yes, he gets some of the blame. He was running the baseball operations.
Right.
But
I tweeted out about that yesterday.
Yeah, but the thing that some people were doing were like Chaim's like the worst person ever. Not worst person, but like worst like CBO, GM thing, whatever.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Outrageous.
And I would just say that I think people are getting more hip to the restrictions that Chaim Bloom had to work with the last, the 4 years that he was here. I think that's become very clear to people. The more stuff has come out, the more that has the more we're finding out about budgets. And I want to say that like I think that people have taken some of the budget stuff the wrong way in a sense. Like there's maybe like the Dodgers clearly don't have a budget. Like the Dodgers just act like money doesn't matter, right?
The Mets didn't have a budget.
Well, the Mets do now.
Well, now they didn't.
Seemed like last offseason they didn't. It's funny to me. Like after they signed Minaya, I saw somebody posted the rotation. It's like Kodai Senga and Sean Manaea and Jose Quintana and Adrian Hauser and Luis Severino. And I'm like, are people calling for the Mets for Steve Cohen to sell the Mets because of this rotation? Like maybe they should. It's like so that guy has more money than anybody could spend in 100 lifetimes, and that's the rotation that they're putting out. Like, so money it's not ever. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, the fact that the Red Sox have a budget on payroll spending makes them the same as literally like 28 other teams. And the good thing is that the Red Sox budget for their payroll spending is higher than like 2/3 of the teams in MLB.
We're not the Oakland A's.
It's called comfort because of the fact that we've seen them spend a lot more in the past. And it's expensive to go to Fenway Park and like completely get all of that. So they cannot and should not get away with having a payroll the size of like the Tampa Bay Rays. Like that's crazy to me. Like that should never happen, and it's not going to happen. However, I think that like the fact that they have a budget shouldn't be the thing that people are thinking like that's why FSG should sell. Like the Red Sox have, and I think you pointed out a bunch of the numbers, Derek. 2018 and 2019 are the only years where the Red Sox were like way over, like ever in the entire time Fenway Sports Group has owned the team. For the most part, usually I think Alex Spear had it, which is like those are the only years where the Red Sox were not within like I think it was like 10 or 11% of the first CBT threshold in either direction from the time that they introduced the CBT, which I think was in the collective bargaining agreement that started in 2003, which is a year after Fenway Sports Group bought the team. And so I'm bringing that up to just say that like the fact that they have a budget is not something to be like thinking that Red Sox need to sell the team over, because every team has a budget for what they can spend on payroll, except for apparently except for apparently the Dodgers. Like,
that's true.
But we've seen the Mets are not spending as much this offseason. Obviously, the Padres are. They had a terrible situation. Obviously, the owner dies, and they have to. And then it seems like the Yankees are. They traded for Soto, but like. But the Yankees have spent like zero on free agents this offseason so far. So,
although I do want to know, I want to find out how many times Dave Dombrowski had to ask John Henry for more money. That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I want to bring up something. Jake did bring up a good point. I mean, look, you brought the Dodgers, but I mean, they had to reset, and they must have had a budget this past season. No,
exactly. Yeah, because they didn't. I think the Dodgers went over, but they didn't go over by.
Their original plan was to stay under.
Right, and they had. I think the Bauer thing was why they had to go over. Like that was, like they were, because I think they had been banking on that money not counting towards the CBT, and then he gets effectively got reinstated from the suspension, right? So then they were on the hook for everything that he was owed. So that was the reason they were 2023. Absolutely, yes. The Dodgers' plan was to stay under the collective bargaining tax, but they could not because of the Bauer situation.
But the point was like they had to have a budget to try to.
The Dodgers have gone under several times in recent years. Yes, absolutely. They stayed under even after they made the trade for Mookie Betts and David Price. Like they were still under that year, I believe. So, it fluctuates. It goes up and down. Teams go under, teams go over, like whatever and then I think that we're going to see that. Like, I think that we're going to see it with the Padres. I think we're already seeing it where like, I think they're going to try to get under if they haven't already. The Mets may not be as over as they have been every year. And it seems like maybe this year and next year, they're going to try not to be. So it changes. Every team has different things that they have to try to accomplish every year from a salary standpoint. It's not the fact that the Red Sox have a budget on payroll is not a reason to storm Fenway Park with pitchforks and torches.
That's a good point, because that's sometimes I'm like, I want Steve Cohen, but at the same time, it's like, look where they are now. They're buried several years.
Yeah.
Well, they did just buy a bunch of prospects. Definitely.
Right. but at the same time, they're still screwed. But yeah, anything else, guys?
The only thing I'll add is just like it shouldn't be a thing of whether or not your team's over or under. It should be a thing of how good is your team actually.
Right.
Like for example, we say we don't want to spend as little money as the Tampa Bay Rays, but imagine if we were as good as the Tampa Bay Rays with the amount of money they spent, and then we could spend the additional money that the Red Sox have available to them. You know how good that team would be? Imagine taking the Rays and then giving them as much money they can spend as much money as the Red Sox currently are. You know how good that team would be? Like, that's, I think, I like when we talk about like sustainability and like in terms of having a really good young core, when you look at the Rays, look at the amount of talent they have with that low of a payroll. And then imagine saying, "Oh, now go sign 2 big free agents to fill some holes." Exactly. That's like the perfect scenario. Now, is that going to happen? Not necessarily, but let's say the Red Sox, if their payroll was $175 million, and it's like, okay, now go sign 2 big free agents, right?
Yeah.
And those are the 2 guys. It's almost similar. Now they went way over in 2018, but remember the 2017-18 offseason? It was like, we need JD Martinez. That's our guy. We're going to go get him. And they spent money on him. Now, obviously, they ended up going way over, a totally different situation, but that was their guy. That's, who they were looking at. If, let's say, we get to next offseason and the Red Sox are like Max Fried or Walker Buehler or whoever it is, that's our guy. We're going to go get him. Go get him because they do have a lot of young talent and guys like Casas, Bayo, and all those guys. And even coming up with Meyer and Anthony and Teal and York and even got guys now like Duran and Rafaela too in the big leagues, Wilyer Abreu, all those young guys, they are cost controlled. So if you can have the more cost controlled guys you have, the better, because then you have more money to spend on really good players that can fill the holes to take your team from maybe playoff contender to World Series contender.
Right. Good. That's a good
and
point.
Hopefully we see that. It's not looking like that's probably going to happen at this point, but next year we've talked about how loaded the class is. More money off the books. We'll see.
Right. I think it's only fitting we end on predictions. I think that's pretty fun to do. I'll start with our guests. Jake, I guess we'll start with, who do you think the Red Sox will end up? Because I feel like they got to do something with pitching. Is there a guy that comes to mind where you're like, I think the Sox will get him? Is there someone in mind?
I just think, like I said, we don't. The caveat of just like, I mean, it's just a fun exercise, right? Like I'm just trying to think of it in that terms of just like we don't know, but I think it's gonna cost a lot, but I'm gonna this is the name I'm gonna say. Kyle Harrison.
Oh, I like that.
Kyle Harrison. Andrew Bailey knows him well. I don't know what it's going to cost, but that's the name I'm going to throw out there. And again, he's not a guy with much, if any, maybe a little bit of big league experience, right? But one of the top pitching prospects in the game. And the Giants just traded for Robbie Ray, and they're in the mix for Imanaga and Jordan Montgomery and Blake Snell and those guys too. So that's the name I'm going to throw out there. As like the Red Sox will make a trade, it will probably cost one of Meyer or Teal or Anthony, and maybe more. But that's the name I'm going to throw out there.
All right, Meatball. I meant Derrik.
Jeez.
Yes. Touching on.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
There's a difference between the guys I want and the guys I think they're going to get, because there are guys I want. Like, I love Patrick Sandoval as like a middle rotation guy. Do I think the Angels are going to trade him? No. Right? Like, I would love a Braxton Garrett or a Jesus Luzardo. Do I think the Marlins are going to trade them? Or at least are the Red Sox going to be able to get them without giving up one of the big three? Probably not. No. So it's like, okay, it's like, I don't know where they're going to go. I'm not really sure, but I'll just say this. The guy I want them to get, just for the chaos of it, is Marcus Stroman. Because half Red Sox Twitter will lose their mind, and I will love it because it'll be hilarious. So that's what I'm going with.
Jack?
Oh, well, Breslow's talked about being ready to give up prospects. However, I don't see that splash happening right now. I feel like it would kind of be a panic move almost. I think Imanaga is really obtainable and realistic at the same time. It sounds like there's heavy interest. Morosi said, like an hour ago, there's 5 teams interested. I'm going to go ahead and say that they get him. That's what I'm going to say. I don't think a team's going to give him 4 years, $100 million. So I think the Sox are going to get him. I mean, I don't know if I actually believe it, but that's going to be my prediction.
Okay, that just leaves me, which I was going to say Stroman. Thanks. I think that's what I get for calling you Meatball. I think that's karma, but I don't see them getting, like I said earlier in this episode, a big name guy like Montgomery or Snell. But I also don't see them trading with a team like the Mariners because, I mean, they took time to develop them. I know they need hitters, and like, what are the Reds? They need probably they just got Henniger, so it's like, well, how much more pitching do they need to give up for hitting? You know what? I'll go Patrick Sandoval. I think it makes sense. And you got to trade an outfielder, maybe. I think that makes more sense.
Trade Duran like I did in MLB The Show and have him hit 38 homers.
Maybe not to that extent, but yeah.
I wonder if Brian Wu is a dark horse.
Ooh.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Just a thought that you said the Mariners. Who knows?
But yeah. Any final thoughts, gents, before we wrap it up?
Maybe they'll trade for Daniel Bard.
Reunion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. That would be something.
Put him in the rotation. Why not?
This has been great. This has been really great. Thank you guys for having me on. Listen to Derrik and I on the Pesky Report whenever we ever do another episode, hopefully soon. And it was fun to be to have Derrik, to have him crash the show. Unfortunately, we didn't try to get him to say a really difficult to pronounce name. Unfortunately, this time. So
you're gonna love my shirt, Jake.
I'll save that. Yeet! Oh God, yeet! That's a whole other. That's talking about inside jokes. We're not going to go down that path. But anyway. Thank you guys very much for having me. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for having.
I was gonna. Sorry, Jason. We really appreciate your time, Jake. So thank you so much. This was a long episode, so really thank you.
Yeah. So for Jake, you can go check him out. I'll link his Twitter to this episode. For Derrik, for Jack, I'm Jason. Thank you for tuning in. If you're listening in this 1 hour and 37th minute, and go Sox.